Hello and welcome to Behind the Gavel. I'm Lori Jennings, Public Information Officer for Lower Merion Township, and I'm joined today, as always, with Board of Commissioners President Dan Bernheim. Thanks for joining me again today.
Well, Lori, you know, it's always a pleasure, albeit we've had a very difficult July.
Absolutely. It's been a very eventful summer so far, and unfortunately, not in the best sense of the word. How's the community responded to the tragedies that our fire department has experienced?
Well, the community has been amazing, and as you know, on July 4, there was a residential fire, and firefighter Sean DeMonk unfortunately got caught on the third floor of the structure, and notwithstanding heroics of other folks who were able to bring him down and rush him to an emergency the hospital, he did not survive the injuries. And amongst the horror part of it is that on July 5, the next day, Sean and his wife were scheduled to return to their home in Ontario. But nevertheless, he showed up for the fire in order to serve with his comrades. There was a memorial service conducted for him that could not have been done with more class or integrity. And the brotherhood, and I use that men and women, of firefighters that showed up from the community, at least 500 of them that were there. It was as moving an event as possible. And now you and I sit here today within 24, 48 hours of yet the second tragedy of our fire department. It had been over 100 years since somebody had been lost on duty, and now we have two within three weeks. And Tom Royds, who has been working at both Belmont and Union, was responding to an accident on the expressway near the Gladwin exit. And as they were cleaning up and wrapping up, somebody comes down on the side berm of the road and runs over three of our firefighters, one of the state troopers. They're all rushed to the hospital. And Tom, whose brother works for our public work department, it did not survive. So we find ourselves in just this horrific situation once again, and I have no doubt that the community will rally, but your heart goes out for the families of the firefighters and their extended family of all the firefighters who really are just remarkable individuals. So yeah, it's been a very difficult time.
Absolutely, it sure has. And it's been a difficult time for many reasons over the past month. But on another note, we can have a quick update on something we last spoke about. The Township Administration Building and other buildings and facilities have opened now. So how's that going?
Well, interestingly enough, there was some ambivalence. Do we or don't we do that? The reaction has been positive, 100% positive. If I were to use, which is not, you know, the litmus test of determining, you know, the public opinion, every single email or phone call or comment I've received is, oh, thanks, we're glad we're able to do things in person for every single level of the department. And what I've heard from our staff there, they're glad to see the public back and be able to deal with them. We have all the safety precautions that are in place for the public and for our staff. So that has worked out well. And, you know, notwithstanding what we hear about the Delta virus, we hope that, you know, we're going to be able to continue to do this and encourage those who have not been vaccinated. You need to get the vaccine. When you read the statistics that 97% of the people in the hospital are unvaccinated and 99% of those who pass are not vaccinated, do you really need any other statistic to tell you what to do?
There are also a number of community and civic events slowly being added to the calendar across the township this summer and fall. So Dan, we're getting there.
Yeah, it's nice to see that we've already set the table for the mainline bike event, which has always been a favorite of many. And then Oktoberfest, which is sponsored by Ardmore Initiative, that's back on the calendar. So it's good to feel that sense of normal. You see a lot of other outdoor activities, you know, taking place. So we're encouraged that we're able to move forward. And as I said, you know, hopefully we can continue in that fashion as time goes on, recognizing every decision we make today, we're willing to re-examine it tomorrow.
Right. So let's talk about sustainability a little bit. So one of the folks you might see when you come to the Township building is our recently hired sustainability manager, Paloma Vila. And what are some of the board's priorities regarding sustainability, and how will the extra set of hands help us meet those goals?
Well, one, we welcome Paloma, with open arms. She really is a great find. I believe she's got her master's in sustainability engineering and comes with about 9 years of experience working for a couple of other engineering firms and setting up some sustainability programs. But first, it would be a mistake not to recognize that the township has been on the cutting edge of doing this for quite some time, and give credit where credit is due to our manager, Ernie McNeely. There are a number of initiatives that I recall him sort of pushing the board literally for years to get going. So we have, in place some energy saving programs. We've replaced street lights, which will probably curtail, energy use by at least 8%. We've examined the HVAC systems in all the buildings to upgrade those, changing our source of electric power. So we're really doing a lot, but we're looking forward to getting a program that the EAC has been working on for quite some time. I think Paloma, will be hands-on assistance, in getting that to come forward. Every time we have a development, we're talking about energy use, more green space, and we need to get a more solidified program that's there, so each time it's not doing it somewhat on the fly. And there are all these other initiatives. Look, just the other night, we had a handful of people that came forward to us to say, we've had enough of these power leaf blowers. Between the noise they make, the pollution they make, is it time that we can go ahead and look to the electric ones? So while the technology may not be there yet for landscapers and have you, we'll eventually move in that direction. So we'll examine that, and she'll be very helpful as we try to look at that as an alternative, small in the scheme of things, but if you're living next to somebody who's got a leaf blower going 24/7, could be a major deal. So we look really forward to her getting her, sea legs so we can get moving.
And on a related note, the board approved a stormwater fee feasibility study. And what will that study produce, and when might the board see the results?
Well, we approved with, after bids came in, with an entity, Arcadius. It's about $141,000 for a study. And the purpose of this is to try to design a fair and equitable methodology that we can establish and then implement a stormwater, impact fee to pay for the costs of a lot of the stormwater management projects that we have underway. You need to understand, stormwater runoff is a major contributor to pollutants in our streams and in our rivers, and we have been subject to a number of federal and state legislations. I'm always fond of saying the alphabet soup, where the EPA tells the DEP that we have to implement MS4, which is, the municipal separate storm sewer, system of protocols. And in 2018, we had to put forth a whole program, and there are about 14 major initiatives, which if you were to project out the costs that we're going to have over 10 years, we're going to spend about 80% more, on stormwater management than we do now. So this study is going to take a look at, all right, what can we do to have what are known as impact fees in order to offset some of those costs. And the study will tell us what's available. Doesn't mean that we're going to do it, but we need to have that data in order to make the decision. This isn't unique, happens throughout the state. Impact fees are generally tied to impervious ground, and there are credits if you have stormwater management systems in place. But unlike taxes, where there are certain places that are exempt, that's not the concept with stormwater fees. I imagine that will have a very interesting reaction to some landowners. So we need to make sure that we get all of the public, involved. Everybody who's got property engaged in this process as we all go through a learning curve, and then make a decision what, if anything, we do about it.
So do we have anything further on sustainability before we take a break?
Well, I think that the issue with sustainability, which is a pretty broad topic, the hard part's going to be that we have a lot of folks that on our board that really are very, very strong advocates for this, which is healthy, because they're going to push the envelope to its edges, and that's a good thing. But what we need to recognize is that as a municipality, we have certain guardrails of what we can and can't do, and there may be some good ideas, but we have to be realistic of what we can do that actually makes an accomplishment. So I think it'll be very interesting as we get the plan from the EAC and we put on the table some realistic items that as a township we can continue to be, which I said a couple minutes ago, a leader in this area.
Well, that will have to do it for our first segment, but there's much more to get to, so please stay tuned. We'll be right back with more Behind the Gavel. Welcome back to Behind the Gavel. I'm Lori Jennings, here with Board President Dan Bernheim. Thanks again for being with me here today, Dan.
And again, Lori, always my pleasure.
The board recently heard a fairly extensive update and presentation from the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee. What was the substance of the presentation?
Well, Commissioner Anthony Stevens has chaired that committee. We've been wrestling with this problem for a while, and it's not just Lower Merion. It's something systemic throughout the nation of what do you do with affordable housing. So we're working with staff very, very diligently hard and bringing in some other professionals to give some advice. There was a presentation to update the board on many of the considerations of what was going on as to what do we do with some of our programs that are in place, how do we enhance them, and what do we do with some of the funds we have, and potentially what are we going to do with some of the American Rescue Plan funds. So there was discussion about our rehab program, which is in place, programs that we have to help with down payments for homeowners, first-time home owners, what we can do with the zoning code for incentives for affordable housing, and then an issue which few people are aware of but is a problem, what's referred to as tangled titles, and what if anything we can do in connection with that. But you have to understand what is affordable housing, and there are all these different definitions about it. Where, if the concept if you're spending 30% of your gross income for housing and utilities, that's trying to get the borderline. And HUD puts out all of these statistics of what constitutes low income, moderate income, really low income. In order to have certain guidelines. An example: a family of four that's making $75,000, they say would spend about $1,900 a month on housing, and that's moderate, versus low. Just to give us some guidelines of what we're looking at, albeit Lower Merion is a little bit different than the national average.
Several alternatives were presented on how to use the funds available to the township. And what were those, and what was the sense of the board on how to proceed?
Well, the board was receiving information in order to make that upcoming decision, but it really is going to look to the guidance from the ad hoc committee. The whole concept of having these committees is so that the whole board is starting from ground zero coming forth. So we received information about some first, we have a lot of programs that are in place. This isn't new to us. We've had CDBG funding, which has probably had over 260,000 rehab projects and about 11 home purchases. We have a voucher program that's already helped about 67, homes. And there has been rent and mortgage assistance throughout the pandemic that's out there. So some of the things that the committee was looking at, for example, was what do we do to enhance those programs? And again, for example, with the zoning, as we're approaching the saldo that we talked about last time, what incentives can be there? We've had incentives for increased density or for sometimes impervious space, changes to assistance. Do we continue doing that? And I think the ad hoc committee is leaning towards some of the residential rehab programs. That seemed to be what they thought might be the most impactful for a large number of people. So we nevertheless explored that, programs for first-time buyers again, And then there was a concept, what does the township go out and purchase some multifamily places, turn it over to nonprofits? And I applaud them for, we'll say, thinking with outside the box, but we prove time and time again, we may not be the best real estate investors or landlords. It's very administratively burdensome, even if we're going to turn it over to somebody else. So as you can tell, I wasn't a real fan of that concept, but I think the others have got some legs, and the board will come back and make some decisions. And we're really looking to put something in place by year end that's going to have, impact to the community.
Another issue identified by the committee centered on the concept of tangled titles. And what is a tangled title, and how does it relate to affordable housing?
Well, this is a complex issue. When I have my other hat on, on occasion, in the legal world, I've dealt with this in representation of some of the financial institutions I represent. And the problem comes up where somebody's living in a house that has been in their family for a period of time, and prior owners passed away, but there was no actual deed transferring ownership. So the problem becomes they go to do financing, for example. Well, you need to own the property in order to be able to sign for a mortgage, or to sign for something else that's going to create a lien on the property as security. And trying to figure out what happened historically is not easy. Sometimes there are intervening liens that need to be cleared. So this is a problem that makes it difficult for sometimes people to stay in their property or to transfer for other reasons. And one of the concepts I referenced to the board when this came up is that, and this is not unique, it happens elsewhere, there are some communities where they have local law schools, and they tap into them by educating some of the students, working with some of the lawyers locally to set up programs to help get what are called actions to quiet title, to untangle the titles. So this is something that we're going to look at, because it really is a problem.
The board also heard a presentation on implementation of the Transportation Demand Management Policy, or TDM. As a reminder, what are the goals of this policy?
Well, the whole idea is to try to figure out, all right, what can we do to reduce some of the peak hour traffic that's out there, and a goal of trying to knock it down somewhere between 5 and 7%, with a 6-year period, and 5 or 7% may not sound like a lot, but or 6 years may sound like a long time. Difficult task. So how do you do that? How do you reduce some of the vehicle miles? One concept, can you increase, the availability of bicycles, or for pedestrians to go ahead and walk? And as you know, we have, an ad hoc committee on sidewalks, which is going to come forth with some recommendations of what we can do there. But also there are some infrastructure considerations. Public transportation, in my humble opinion, that's the real key. And one of the things you have to do is make it more comfortable for them. As you know, we were in the Inquirer for one of our bus stops, which was not the most enjoyable article to read, because it's not the most pleasant of bus stops. So, try to go ahead and improve that. And, we've been in touch with SEPTA about it as well, because that enhances, their ridership. And again, to see what we can do to promote, biking and sidewalks. Another aspect of this, there's a whole educational, component to this. There are websites are out there. There's a handbook for this. And so the idea is to say, all right, we need a full-fledged program to see what we can do to try to reduce, some of the auto traffic, which, as I said before, very, very difficult, but we got to make the effort.
Well, finally this month, Dan, I thought we could briefly comment on a very large project in Ardmore, the so-called Piazza development, which extends from Ardmore to Greenfield Avenues along Lancaster Avenue. For those who may not know, what has been approved?
Well, this is a real game changer in Ardmore, and I was very candid about that when this plan came forward. And I first want to say they have retained first-class architects and engineers, and they're all good people. And the fact that I may not like this project, it still is compliant with our old code, and that there were many what were called placement plans, as people learned that we were going to have a new zoning code, which in part was meant to dial back some of the larger multi-family developments because of density concerns. And under the old code, plans were put in place. This is one of them. So what's going to occur, it's going to knock down all of those buildings along that area. So it's over 151,000 square feet, a little bit less than 3.5 acres. And the plan is to construct a 5-story mixed-use building, which will have about 68,000 plus feet for retail and 279 apartments, which is a lot. There will be 615, parking spaces, which is a lot, because that's a lot of traffic in and out, a lot of people in and out. So there will it'll take West Athens Avenue and cut that through the site to Greenfield. There will be sidewalks, they'll make it more walkable. But it really is something that is different, than Ardmore is now. There are a lot of people who have positive predictions. They think it's going to be, a good thing. And it's going to go forward. I hope they are correct, and that my prediction is that it's going to be a little bit troublesome is incorrect. But as I did reveal to you before, if you're going to guide anything by my predictions, I predicted Carson Wentz would have a good year. So seriously, this is it's a major project, and it is going to go forward, and we're going to do all we can to make it work, notwithstanding some apprehensions that some of us possess.
So is there anything further before we adjourn for the August recess?
Well, I think we'll end where we started. That as a community, we're hurting. The loss of 2 of our firefighters in duty, and both of them tragic in different respects. And that I have no doubt that the community will come together as it always does. Lower Merion's a great place, and we frequently take for granted a lot that goes on. And one of the things I think we take for granted is our fire service. So again, our thoughts and our prayers go out to the immediate families, and as I said before, the brotherhood, men and women within the fire service. And we thank them for all that they have done, and they are in our thoughts and prayers.
We're out of time for this edition of Behind the Gavel. Thank you, Dan, for being here today, and thank you, Lower Merion, for watching. I'm Lori Jennings, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.